What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Monday edition of The Squeeze. I am Tyler Conium. Another football Sunday has passed. One of the joys that well, it's always been a joy, but it's nice now with this newfound position that I have where I'm required to sit and watch NFL Red Zone all day long on Sunday and watch all the games. It's fun, especially with the betting too. You just get a sense of every storyline of every game, which I really, really enjoy. So that has been awesome. 2-2 day yesterday. If you followed the props, I apologize in advance. It wasn't a good day on props. To be fair, I jumped on really the only props I did were touchdown props. So when you look at things like that, like Stephon Diggs touchdown, it's a plus 120. Jamar Chase, plus 105. Ross St. Brown, plus 120. We did hit Mike Evans for plus 195. That was nice. And then DJ Moore over on reception. So the touchdown ones is just sort of like, I'm throwing a half a unit or a little bit less down on there in that sense. But a 2-2 day because we hit the Kansas City Chiefs. They covered. The Bengals did not. They lost by 3 to the Ravens. What is going on in Cincinnati? We had the Bears plus 130. They're a bit of a disaster. And then we did hit the parlay that was the Eagles, the Bills, and the Cowboys. So a 2-2 day officially yesterday. Like I said, if you followed the props, not great really on the props there. I had Calvin Ridley touchdown plus 175. One of those hits and it flips the whole thing. That's just kind of the way that it goes there. So I apologize. But if you did tail the normal bets in the parlay, a 2-2 day there in the NFL. Before we get into today's bets, just want to let you know, if you hop in the Discord, that's where I post everything first. I already posted today's plays in the Discord last night. One of the plays is already 1% CLV increased, so the odds have changed there, which is really, really good. And also, the subscribe button. Tell a friend that if you enjoy this, and we do this all the time, and we're up a whole bunch of units, and it's really, really fun to subscribe. It would be nice. Today's plays. There are 2 Monday Night Football games tonight. One starts at 7:15 and one starts at 8:15. So that's a little bit bizarre, but we're going to be able to get the dual screen going once again, starting with the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. The Saints are coming into this game 1-0. The Panthers are coming into this game 0-1. Now, I am going with the New Orleans Saints here. They're -3. I got this last night at -106 at FanDuel. It looks like it's now -110 at FanDuel, but as always, shop around. This is an interesting matchup. I think the Panthers are better than they should be. They've got Bryce Young at quarterback. He did have a pretty terrible NFL debut last week, though. He completed just 20 of 38 passes for 146 yards, 2 interceptions. Now he's in prime time. Now he's on Monday night at home. Now, their loss last week was against Atlanta. They've only got a mediocre offensive line. It could be a rough outing. The New Orleans Saints defense ranks 8th in NFL dropback EPA last year. They picked off Ryan Tannehill 3 times last week. They held the Titans to 15 points last week. And the Saints now with Derek Carr, I know he had the tumultuous ending with the Raiders last year, but Derek Carr is, he looked good in his Saints debut. He's a significant upgrade. He went 23 of 33 at 305 yards. He's got Chris Olave, and he's got Michael Thomas, who's still performing. And I think Carolina last week allowed just 115 passing yards. Desmond Ridder at quarterback for Atlanta, he's still trying to figure it out. They're not going to be able to do that to the New Orleans Saints. I think that Carr is going to be able to find Olave. I think he's going to be able to find Michael Thomas. Their running game is going to be a question mark with Kamara and Williams injured. But I think the Saints are going to be able to pull this out. I just think it's going to be interesting to see what Bryce Young can do against this defense. His first time in prime time coming off a bad outing. There's a lot more pressure on there. It could go the other way. If you say, you know what? He's not going to play any worse than he did last week. But I think there's just more of a veteran presence with the Saints between Derek Carr, between Michael Thomas. I trust their offense more, and their defense is better than Atlanta was. So I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints here -3 for -106 at FanDuel. The next bet, Deshaun Watson. The books, we cashed this bet last week. It was set at 23.5. This week, it's only set at 24.5. This is -110 at Bet365. It's questionable. So last week, Deshaun Watson went over this total. He ran for 45 yards. That was against the Cincinnati Bengals. He rushed it 5 times, 45 yards, an average of 9 yards per carry. He also rushed for a touchdown. He had a 13-yard run there as well. And then when you look back to last season, so finishing out the season, he rushed for 44 yards on 6 carries against the Steelers, 31 yards on 8 carries against the Commanders, 24 yards on 3 carries against the Saints, 22 yards on 6 carries against the Ravens, 33 yards on 6 carries against the Bengals, 21 yards on 7 carries. Long story short, he's averaging about 6 to 7 rushes per game. He's run for 21. These are like single rushes, 21, 21, 12, 17. He's getting there, and he wants to run, and they're not adjusting, which doesn't really make any sense to me. And again, like I said, last year against Pittsburgh, 44 yards on 6 carries. That was in January at Pittsburgh. I'm very confused why this is still so low. I think he's going to be able to run on this Pittsburgh 7, and until they decide to adjust and put this total around like 28 or 29, I'm just going to keep hammering this home. Deshaun Watson, over 24.5 rush yards, minus 110 at Bet365. And the last bet of the day in the same game, I have a soft spot for George Pickens. I think he's a great receiver. I think he's had some bad drops. I think he's very dynamic. Once he figures it out, he could be exceptional. Maybe it's me because I had him on my fantasy team last year and then I lost him and it was a whole thing. Yada, yada, yada. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers can win this football game at home against the Browns. I'm probably going to be on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Might do some sort of teaser where you can even pull the Pittsburgh number up to like 10 and then do something with the over or the under there. But at the end of the day, George Pickens is Kenny Pickett's top target. He caught 5 of 7 targets last week for 36 yards. But this is actually the lowest. This line opened at 41.5. It got bet all the way up to 46.5, and now it's sort of settled back down around again and again. I got this for 42.5. He was limited to a hamstring injury in practice, and I think that's why the number has dipped again. But he finished a 22 campaign against the Browns. He had a 72-yard showing, caught 3 of 6 passes, including a 31-yard touchdown. Same game where Deshaun Watson ran for the 44 yards. And he and Pickett did seem to pick off where they left off in the preseason. Pickens caught 3 total passes in 3 exhibition games, but 2 of those were for 33 yards, and 1 was for 35 yards. I think they're going to start having to figure it out. They've got Mike Tomlin. They've got a decent offensive line. I think Pickett and Pickens are going to have to start figuring it out, or they're not going to be there for very long. But I do think that it's going to happen this week. Pittsburgh's play calling, it's not going to be as forced in week 1. I think that they're going to probably be throwing the ball a lot with what's going on with Najee Harris. We don't really know. I think that offensive coordinator Matt Canada last week, he had to accelerate the team's tempo, and, Pittsburgh did throw it at the highest rate in week 1. They threw on 83.61% of their snaps. And that was against a San Francisco defense that's probably going to start picking you apart a little bit there. So I like for George Pickens to figure it out. They don't really have many other offensive weapons when it comes to their wideouts. I think Pickett's going to have to find Pickens. This is probably going to be a low-scoring game, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Pickens catch like a 35 or a 36-yard pass and then have a couple more for maybe 8 or 9 yards. I just think the number is simply too low for what this is. Don't really want to touch the total on this game. I do lean Pittsburgh. Like I said, might play around with a teaser or something there. But officially, I'll take George Pickens over 42.5 receiving yards. That's minus 114 at FanDuel. So once again, to break down those bets for you, you've got the New Orleans Saints minus 3 for minus 106 at FanDuel. Give me Deshaun Watson over 24.5 rushing yards for minus 110 at Bet365. And give me George Pickens over 42.5 receiving yards minus 114 at FanDuel. As always, drop a comment if you're fading or following. You can follow me across all my social channels linked in the description, and your audio is on Apple and on Spotify. Have a great Monday. Let's talk sports.